Hey everyone, welcome to the program, WRSA Radio. I'm your host, G1, as always. Hope you're having a good week. It's been a good one for me. Let's dive right in because we have a lot of info to cover. We are, of course, going to get into the Epstein files this week's on the show. It's kind of unavoidable at this point. We need to cover this information. It's important stuff that's going on. It's got everybody's attention, and it's kind of the focus of a lot of internet chatter this week. So last week we got 3 million documents released from this trove of material that is from this case, and supposedly there's like 6 million or something like that. So we've gotten about half, maybe a little over that, because there was some information that came out before, but at any rate, this has produced a flood of videos and posts and articles, just all manner of media out on the net. And most of that information, not just the videos and articles, but most of the material that was released was honestly completely worthless. So why do I say that? Because it's uninformed, because it's wrong, and or because it's intentionally wrong. There's a lot of crap being put out right now based off of the crap that's in those files. So let's get this out of the way first here. One of the things that jumped out quickly was a host of people zeroing in on the most sensational reports contained in this material. The problem is that most, if not all, of those reports were completely unsubstantiated. They were anonymous or semi-anonymous reports that were submitted to the FBI either through tip lines or emails or various ways of getting this information in. People were sending in these reports that said some of the most horrible and outlandish things, just damning accusations, and none of them have been confirmed. There's nothing that substantiates the majority of this information. Anyone could call in to this tip line and say whatever they wanted to, and if they mentioned Epstein in that report, it got included in this file. And so you get vast amounts of garbage. People call in and claim, every time there's a serial killing, for example, they come out and, hey, we've got 2 or 3 murders or whatever, and they're linked, we think there's a serial killer. You will get people who will call in and confess to the crimes, even though they have absolutely nothing to do with it. That kind of chaff, it's just garbage, and unfortunately it wastes a lot of time for investigators when they're trying to go through these things, because there's just so much garbage that comes in. And unfortunately, in this case, that kind of stuff gets put into these files. And this is exactly what I was warning was going to happen a number of weeks back on the program. And people would see some of this stuff come out, and they would completely disregard any logical capability that they have, because it satisfies a preconceived idea that they have. So because it confirms what they already believe, and notice I said believe, not know, it confirms what they believe to be true, so therefore it must be true. And that is a serious mistake. For example, I don't like George Bush, and I believe that he was a criminal, and he did a lot of evil stuff. So therefore that report accusing him of being involved in human sacrifice, well, it must be true then, right? Even though there's nothing from that report that's substantiated. It's a baseless accusation. And it's also convenient that he's now dead and would be unable to defend himself, even if he was to be confronted about this, or this would be put out there. Which is another theme that you might notice with some of these really horrible accusations, as a lot of the people involved are dead, so they can't refute that information. Prince Andrew, for example. or Prince Philip, sorry. Andrew is still alive. Prince Philip is not. Prince Philip was implicated in some of these accusations. Well, he's dead. He can't refute that. It's been a number of times that we've seen that. So now take this and apply it to almost everyone who is commenting on this information, because the files, well, they've become this kind of genie in the lamp. It's kind of giving everybody three wishes, granting them, regardless of what side of the political spectrum you fall on. Everybody's getting something out of this. Hey, this says this about this guy that I don't like, so it must be true. I'm also seeing a number of disinformation posts on social media. I've seen this at least 4 times in the last 2 days. The post is just it's a screen capture from a file, and it's highlighted text, but it's very blurry. And in the post, it tells you, well, this email here, or this report says this. It's accusing this person of doing this. This is something that is really terrible, and you should know about it. But it's something that's false, or at least only partially true. And so you click on the screen capture trying to say, well, let me read this report for myself to kind of see if, well, maybe they're overreacting, or maybe it's not as bad as they're saying, or it's worse than they're saying it is. And you read on it, but you can't read the highlighted text. You can't read any of the information. When you try to zoom in on it, it's so blurry you can't make out what the words actually are. So you can't confirm in the post. They're using this as, well, see, I've highlighted this information out of the file, so you got to believe what I'm saying. Well, it's not there. It's not real. And when you go to try to find, well, let me search for that in the file, and it's not there. There's nothing that backs up what that person has put in their post. And I've seen posts showing information from a confirmed email or a confirmed report. Hey, this is a message between 2 people, so you have no real reason to discount what they're saying. And then they mix it with an unconfirmed report and say, see, these 2 things are the same, and so because of this unconfirmed report, this is horrible. But that unconfirmed report is unsubstantiated. It's just that. It's unconfirmed. There's nothing that actually, it mentions the same people. It's not mentioning the same act, or it's not, the email is not confirming the report. It's an email about something completely different. But they're using that to try to lend credence to an accusation that they're throwing out there. And folks, if it may sound like I'm trying to defend these people, I'm not. I'm just telling you this is being done intentionally, and this is being done. It's being done for a reason. I can't speak to the motives of everybody who's making those kinds of posts, and some of it could simply be because they just don't know any better, and some of it could be it's just clickbait, and they're trying to get monetization on their channels. They're taking advantage of this big story to try to generate ad revenue. I have to allow for that, obviously. That's a possibility. But I'm positive that a lot of this is being done to lay the groundwork for what is going to come next, okay? What is coming after this. There's going to be a lot of people who come out and say, well, see, this is just outright false. This is just a lie. This one over here is a lie. This is over here is a lie. And yeah, they're right about that. But then the next step is they're going to say, because those are lies, it's all lies. You can't believe anything. It's oversaturated with bullshit, so you don't believe any of it. None of it can be trusted. And that is classic disinformation campaign that is being played here. This is exactly what happened with the pizza thing. Remember the pizza thing? I'm not going to go into details about that because I don't want the video to get pulled. But they told you that back then as well. Oh, that's all nonsense. That's all crap. Because some of these things did prove to be nonsense. They proved to be hysterical and unsubstantiated fantasy. Well, then it all must have been that way. No. No, we're seeing pieces and parts of that lining up, and a good part of that story is in fact coming out to be true. Or at least it looks to be true. And yet you'll be ridiculed for suggesting that that is the case in circles of less informed people. Oh, that was proven a hoax. That's false. No, it wasn't. So what are we to do in this kind of environment? I tell you this all the time. Don't believe anything that you read or hear or see unless it's consistent with things that you know to be true. Not believe, because belief is different than knowledge. You know it to be true. Now, personally, when looking at this material, I'm only believing it when it's actual emails that are in the files. Okay? And why do I say that? Well, because I've also seen fake emails. I've seen fake emails that are circulating. People are those same kinds of false posts where they say, look at this email, look what it says. And then you go and you look for that email and it's not in the files. So unfortunately, if you're going to believe these things, if you're going to travel in these circles, you're going to have to do some of the legwork on your own. You're going to have to go to the files and confirm some of this stuff, because you can't just believe what people are throwing out there. So we have to be very careful. But I generally believe that if it's an email, that it is at least as accurate as the FBI knows. Okay, it's something that the FBI found in a machine somewhere, or however they got it, and it's in the file because the FBI says this is a real email, and so this is evidence. Okay, I would like to see more context around some of those conversations, but generally I believe that at least these emails, particularly the ones from Epstein, are the words of Epstein and the people that he is communicating with. Unless I can't find an email in the files, then I would discount that. But if it's there, if it's in the file and it's what people say, then we have to go on, yes, this is at least information that these people have communicated, so we have to believe that at least they believe it, okay? Because they believe that at least those emails were at least somewhat private. And so they were less careful in what they said there. Now, Epstein, however, was aware that most of his emails were likely being read by the government. He says this in some of his older messages. And so he's known this for a very long time, and he knows, in the circles that he ran, he knows the capability of intelligence agencies. He knows what they're capable of doing. So it's entirely possible that he put things in those emails that lead people down false pathways. That's why he's using coded words even in those emails. So we have to allow for that. Some of those code words, some of those things that he said might be false too. This man is very, very intelligent. Okay, so and many of the people who communicated with him, however, were not very savvy to this. So they said things that put them, in the crosshairs of accusations. And those things warrant, further investigation. They warrant, I would say, condemnation, but at least a furrowed brow when you look at those people, So the emails are far more important to me than the majority of the reports and some of the other information that's in there. I would put more stock in them, at least in my opinion, and be very leery of the most wildly horrible accusations. But again, we have to be very careful with the emails, because people misinterpret things that they read in the emails. I saw an email today where somebody was talking about some girls. Oh, these girls, and they're attractive, and they said some kind of derogatory things about them, and he's sending Epstein an email and says, I'll meet you after class. And then it says, Hari, New York City, between 30 between 6 and 7. And then it talks about the girls. Well, people interpreted that to mean, oh, they're talking about girls between the ages of 6 and 7. No, they're not. They're not talking about that at all. Hari was a yoga studio on 30th Street between 6th and 7th Street in New York City. That's what they were talking about. Now, that studio is no longer in business, but at the time of the email, it was. So people misinterpret things that they read. You have to be very careful of this information. It's kind of the theme here of the show today. But we do have to put Pam Bondi to the fire to pursue this stuff. I'm not telling you that I think horrible things didn't happen. That's not the case. I'm telling you that when we have accusations like this, we have to be seriously skeptical. There has to be more investigation and more work done on this, and I think we should be pushing for that without focusing on the more outlandish stuff, because we can get justice when we get the truth. But we will be dismissed and sidelined if we're pushing for these falsehoods and these baseless stories. And it's easily dismissed and easily provable as being inaccurate or wrong. At any rate, let's shift gears here, because there's something that's bubbling under the surface of all of this, and it's kind of getting glossed over by the sexual crimes aspect of this. And that thing bubbling under the surface is who exactly Epstein did the majority of his work for. I think it's safe to say that he worked for himself overall, but he had customers. And his primary customer was, of course, Mossad and Israel. And people are beginning to see this truth, and the files are kind of flinging open the doors on this point. More and more people are starting to ask the question, well, what is a goy? Okay, well, why did Epstein call us goys and goyim? Yeah, that's an important question. Why did he use that word? Why did he use that word exactly? And the mainstream press is out there trying to tell you that Epstein was a Russian spy and he was doing all this for Russia. Yeah, sure, buddy. Sure. Again, you need to look at things logically and with the utmost skepticism. That's not who Epstein spent his time working for, okay? He was communicating with the former Israeli prime minister, not Russians. And just so you know where you really stand in all of this, how they really think about you, it's more embarrassing to the politicians that Epstein was running a honeypot trap for Israel than it is that many of them were caught in the honeypot trap. They're willing to sacrifice those people. Okay, fine. You got caught. Let's put you get exposed. But we can't talk about these emails and these communications and who he's actually doing this for. That's what they think about you. And there are other more important bits of information that are coming out of this release, getting more and more into exactly what Epstein was working on and with who he was working with. For example, Bill Gates and Epstein were discussing making money off of vaccines. That was before 2020. Fancy that. I wonder why they would be doing that. So that's another caveat that you need to keep in mind. Don't get distracted by the sensationalist stuff. As horrible as it might sound, and as tragic and just, yeah, it's horrendous. A lot of it is likely unsubstantiated BS. But we know there were crimes. We know there was a honeypot operation going on. We can demand that the people involved explain themselves. But that's only one part of this. And it may be the minor part of this. Beyond that, there's a lot more questions that need to be asked about why he was doing what he was doing and why he was backing technology and programs and various people and various thoughts and ideas, and why he was doing all those things. Why was he courting the people that he was courting? You get people caught in a honey trap because you want them to do something. Why did he want them to do something? Because it's the why behind the honeypot that is the real important aspect of this. Keep in mind, there's a greater reason that Trump is not really wanting to release these files. It's not because they implicate Trump in a honeypot. They don't. It's clear that's not the case. Epstein hated Trump. He says that in a lot of emails, in a lot of different ways. He did not like Donald Trump. He was absolutely dismissive of him. He didn't think he was as important as Trump thought he was. He didn't think he was as rich as Trump thought he was. I think there was a lot of envy between both of them. I think there was a lot of hatred going both ways in that regard. But I don't think he caught Trump in anything. I think he tried. There's emails between him and Maxwell where they were trying to do that. They were trying to get Trump caught up with some young women or whatnot, and Trump didn't take the bait. He didn't go into that. So why is Trump dragging his feet on releasing this information? Why is Pam Bondi not opening up more prosecutions? Well, it's because of the who and the why. It has nothing to do with the what. They don't want to open that can of worms. It's not because they care about the people who were caught in the honeypot. That's not it at all. It's because they care more about why he was running it and who he was running it for. They don't want to go down that road publicly. Those are deeper rabbit holes than they want to go down. And being frank here, I think a lot of what will eventually come out, because I think we're going to end up going down those rabbit holes, it's going to be far worse than people think. It's going to be worse than what people even think is going on. So use some judgment on what you're reading and stay focused on getting to the real truth, not the disinformation. Sift through the chaff to get to the wheat. Now that is all I have time for this week. Like and subscribe. Come see us over on Gab. Nice crew and the mothership, and I'll see you on the next episode.